I find working with velvet, it's pin regularly, pin often, on top and underneath, and horizontally. And when that fails, scream relentlessly into the void.
Aggie Cromwell also teaches us that
being normal is vastly overrated.
Welcome back to spooky season, my friends. Now that October is officially upon us, I have got to start working on my annual Halloween costume. Every year I turn myself into a witch that in some way, shape, or form in that moment is what is tugging at my heart. I know that sounds absolutely silly, but these are all women that hold a special place in my heart. And this year I have absolutely chosen without hesitation to turn myself into Agatha Cromwell. Splendor Agatha Cromwell. Or Aggie for short, as she prefers to go by. This is a woman who, at well over 1,000 years old, still is willing to embrace modern technology, try new things. How brilliant is that? She desperately loves her family. And even though her daughter Gwen left Halloween Town and lived in the mortal world and raising her kids in the mortal world, she gets on a bus and travels to the mortal realm on the one day a year that the portal is open to spend time with her grandkids. This is a woman who fiercely loves her family, but she cares about all of the people in Halloween Town, what happens to them. She genuinely cares about her grandchildren and her daughter, and she knows that the next generation holds just as much power. And of course, being normal is vastly overrated.
Being normal is vastly overrated.
But if you followed the movie series into the fourth movie, we actually get to see Aggie as a 18-year-old young woman fighting for her right to choose the path of her own destiny. She's a woman well before her time. In the Middle Ages, abdicates her throne to live a quiet, normal life. That definitely seems like something worth emulating as far as I'm concerned. And of course, the last but not least reason why Aggie Cromwell is so absolutely special to me is because she is brought to life by the one and only, the amazing, the beautiful, the lovely, the kind-hearted Debbie Reynolds, a queen in her own right. To turn myself into Aggie Cromwell, I'm definitely going to have to make the dress. I don't think I have seen it really anywhere in the stores to buy. I've seen other makers selling their versions that are wonderful and beautiful, but I'm gonna make my own because it's what I do. I have the I can do that gene. And since my costuming background is in the replication of stage and film, this is right up my wheelhouse. The only thing that I personally am on a total struggle bus about is the organza for her sleeves and collar and the drapey bits that hang from her waistline as part of her skirt. That organza was all custom made specifically for that dress. So it's not like I can go out and go shopping and find it somewhere. The other problem is we no longer have Joann's. I personally no longer have access to a Michael's. My local Michael's shut their doors and is being turned into a grocery store, and Michael's has no plans of giving us a new one. So that leaves me with the internet or what I already have in my inventory. So let's start digging through the stash, see what we have, see what we need, and figure this out. Together, maybe?
These are the two patterns that I think I'm going to use to Frankenstein together Aggie's dress. This simplicity pattern gives me the empire waistline and pockets. Because again, every self-respecting witch needs pockets. But I'm going to pull the sleeves out of this one. It's got that seam right above the elbow and then drops down into the flounce. This gives her the perfect nod back to her medieval roots, which I absolutely love. Left over in my stash of making Santa wear, I have a couple of yards left over of this stretch velvet that it's reading red in the camera at the moment, but in real life it's actually a nice dark crimson, not quite burgundy. And I think that this is going to be perfect for the base of Aggie's dress. And then not so perfect, I do have 5 yards of this unknown origin organza. It's already metallic, which will be a great base for me. It's thundering. This will be a great base for me to work with, and I'm gonna try and change the color. Okay. And since I am never going to find this rainbow organza in the wild, I'm going to try and change the color of this. Wish me luck. Oh, that's so pretty. I don't want to cut it. I don't want to ruin it. But alas. So I think what I need to do is I need to get the skirt and sleeve pieces completely cut out first so that I can get these painted or dyed or what have you, whatever I end up doing to them, in order to let them dry. And the amount of humidity that we are having, because it is actively raining, actively thundering, is immense. So it's going to take forever for all of this to dry. So I got to get going on this. So while cutting out the organza, I made a decision for the opening of the front panels. I'm actually putting it on the selvage because that's a nice tightly wound selvage. It's not going to fray on me, and that's one less seam I have to worry about dealing with. It's supposed to be for this particular dress on the fold, but for Grandma Aggie's dress, it is open up the front, so I'm sticking with what is going on with Aggie's dress. And then I'm also not going to cut the pocket pattern out on this. If I leave that seam open, in addition to leaving the front seam open, I can still then access my pocket seams in the velvet layer of the dress. I also made the decision that even though it's written in the pattern to cut this on the grain, I made the decision to actually cut it on the bias. This will give this section of my arm around my upper arm a little bit more give. If you look, this fabric doesn't have any give this way. It doesn't have any give this way, but if we cut it on the bias, it has a little bit of stretch. So that's going to put that stretch in the forearm place of my arm. And on this kind of fabric, on this kind of costume, having that freedom in my arms I think is really important. And also considering we're going to be going up against something that's a knit, I think that's also important. So yeah, that's what I decided to do. Okay, I've got all of my crinkled organza cut out, and I have a few big chunks here left over, and I'm going to play with these a little bit to see if my theory of using watered down craft paint to paint these is actually going to work. So let me get into test mode. I'm so glad I didn't start cutting up my scraps yet, because I just remembered I still have to do our lapel. To create the lapel pieces for Grandma Aggie, the first thing I did was create an upper collar using both the front and the back pieces to make sure that that neckline would line up. Can you guys even see that? You know, I don't think you guys can see that. I wanted to make sure that that very light pencil neckline would line up with the neckline of my upper collar. And gave a really big, boisterous collar. For the lower collar, I really only need the front neckline. And again, it's still a nice, big, boisterous collar. It's gonna stick out past that arm side. And so I want both of them to stick out past that arm side, but we're just gonna... And so this is the collar line, and I'm gonna add seam allowances and do all the things to make everything line up properly. So in trying to figure out how to make dye out of my acrylic paints, I found a variety of different options. The two that I'm going to try today, because I have ingredients for, is mixing acrylic paint with rubbing alcohol and a combination of fabric paint, more fabric medium, and then water, which will soften it. A third option that I saw was mixing fabric softener with paint. I don't have fabric softener at the moment, so these are the two we're going to try today. If they don't work, we will proceed with something else. Alright, supposedly for this particular option, we mix equal parts of the two ingredients. On a molecular level, this is supposed to separate out the pigment from the plastic medium that makes acrylic dry hard. Ooh, that's strong. So you can actually see these plastic chunks in my paintbrush. Like, there they are. Okay, that's cool. And all I'm left with is the purple pigment. Okay. I'm just gonna do a dippity-doo. And we will let that dry and see how it looks. Alright, I'm going to give these a little while to dry and see how they do. Okay, I have swapped into painting clothes, got my hair pulled up so that I can completely minimize the potential damage I do to myself. So let me take a look at how my samples have dried so I can decide how I'm going to tackle this. Alright, so other than a few random fingerprints, that did nothing. It looks like all of the paint is on my paper. The purple, however, actually looks good. It still shows the opalescence underneath. I don't think that I'm totally worried about that. I need to try something else with the gold. I'm curious if just dip dyeing it would do anything, or am I, because I feel like the gold is going to be the thing that shows the most, or shows the least, so I want to put the most effort into it. But it's actually taking a lot of effort to actually saturate this, believe it or not. Alright, I'm going to see how this dries before proceeding anymore. But I think for my purple, cream, and crimson stripies, I'm going to go with the alcohol method. Yeah, even looking, it's starting to reject the water. Interesting. Alright, I'm going to let this dry. Since I decided to go the acrylic and rubbing alcohol method, I'm going to do dioxazine purple, alizarin crimson, Hooker's green, and old gold. These are mixed at a 50-50 ratio each with the rubbing alcohol. And I'm just going to mix them in disposable cups to make my life easy. I'm also going to be using inexpensive, cheap brushes that my daughter has already made use of. And for anybody who is worried, I am working with a window open for ventilation because of the rubbing alcohol. So the stripes on the lapel are diagonally starting from the corners in. I'm not going to be particularly precious about my color order. I'm really more looking at the diagonal direction of my stripes. And I do think that I'm going to separate them and do them one at a time. I'm also allowing it to bleed. I kind of like that. And then I'm also filling in gold in any of the nakey spots. All right, I'm gonna finish doing this and we'll see how it looks when it's dry. Okay, I'm actually really loving the way these are looking like watercolors. So I've got both sets of collars. This is the actual collar, that's the lapel, top half of the sleeve, and then over on my desk, I've got the bell sleeve bottom and the second bell sleeve bottom that's just gold. So, I am well underway in getting this done. I'm genuinely hoping that this works because I don't know what else I'm going to do otherwise. Organza dyes okay, but I would have to use water hot enough that I'll lose the crinkle texture. However, at this point, I am completely out of butcher block paper for, you know, protecting my surfaces. So I gotta wait until one of these guys is dry enough to relocate before I can do the skirts. So while my paint is drying, I'm going to take the opportunity to cut out all of my velvet pieces. I just want to discuss really quickly an important fact about velvet. Whether your velvet is a knit or a woven, it doesn't matter. It's going to have what's called nape. This is direction. It has a top and a bottom. It doesn't matter which you decide is top or bottom, but it's going to matter. Once you make a decision, you have to stick with it so that everything is facing the same direction. Let me show you what happened. Here's a piece that I cut off. If you run your hand down it, it feels soft and smooth. It also has a slightly different color than this way. It's slightly darker now, but when I run my hand this way, it's got a slightly rougher texture. Regardless of which direction you choose as your top, that's the direction you stick with. I personally chose that if I'm running my hands this way, it's soft. But the important thing is that all of my pieces face the same direction. If this were black, it would be Judy Hopps' tactical vest. Oh, shit. And so this one kind of became one with my butcher block paper. I guess I let it sit a little too long. It is still moist, so I should be able to peel it off. Okay, crisis averted, but in that happening, some of the paint came off with it, so I don't know. This could be the lining, and use this one as the good one and use this one as the lining. Alright, let me see if the rest of these are okay. Ah! Maybe a paper that's waxed would have been a better option. Oh, fuck. Okay, crisis averted. And this is why we work on protective paper, ladies and germs. The other thing that I have learned from this is that the wax paper actually is a better option because it didn't stick. It still has a little bit of the opalescence to it, but that actually makes me really happy. Yeah, got a little bit stuck there too. I may have learned my lesson. Instead of using the butcher block paper, I'm now using hefty bags. It's waterproof, but it won't absorb. I'm doing all of my ironing using a pressing cloth that will both protect my fabric from the heat of the iron and will protect my iron from any paint residue that may not be fully removed at this point. So for all of my trim work, I'm going to use this gold gimp braid, and it's going to go all around the perimeter of my collar and my lapels, which kind of look like elf ears.
I think the angle of my lapel points is a little off, but to be honest with you, I'm okay with it. I'm still really happy with how it's turned out. So I'm going to proceed with putting the facing on here, and otherwise everything else is just waiting on paint to dry, which I cannot force it to happen sooner. So I'm calling it a day. It's been a very busy day. So... and I have a fur baby who wants attention. Hey. Hello. I realized why the angles were wrong. I had them flipped. I had it like this. It was supposed to be like this. Oops. Better. When I'm making these kind of mistakes, it's indicative that I'm done for the day. And being as I am a hot mess, my makeup is smeared down my face, I'm covered in paint, and I'm starting to make mistakes, I'm definitely done for the day. Good morning. It is day 2. And I'm a little disappointed. Well, frustrated, I guess is a better word. My skirt panels aren't dry yet. So the sides that were actually pressed up against the trash bags, because there's no oxygen flow, is still damp. We shall see. I'm going to try and peel them off and flip them around and see how that does. Alright, well, at the very least, I guess I can finish my bodice. And we'll see how it looks in an hour or 2. So I need to put some of this gimp braid on my sleeve here so that it makes a harlequin pattern. And it's going to go something like this. And then flip back up to this way. And then the same thing over here. And so we'll get this looking pattern out of the gold on there. And to ensure that I actually get everything symmetrical on both the front and the back, I'm going to use the guides that the pattern is already giving me for other purposes. These dots here are used for gathering, and then these notches are specifically for lining it up to the bell portion of the sleeve. So I'm going to crisscross from the gather marks to the notches and then come back up to this other set of notches. I think that should be sufficient. My sleeves are assembled. So I'm going to take everything outside and hang it up while I eat. Maybe that can push it. It's actually sunny today. So I honestly think a lot of the problem is the amount of humidity from how much rain we've been having. So and while waiting on all of my organza skirt panels to dry, I got all of my bodice completely assembled, and my velvet layer of the skirts are assembled. Pockets are in. I probably could have skipped a pleat or 2, but I like it just the same. I'm never going to be one to complain about having a little extra girth in a skirt. The time has come to figure out all of my drapey tassely bits. And unfortunately, this is where my anxiety kicks in. Does it really matter? No. I kind of know that the general shape is a high-low. This is my front, this is my side. But how much of that high-low also comes over the back, like so.
using my roll hem foot, some gold lame thread, and I've got my machine set to a skinny and short zigzag stitch. And I'm going to zigzag over my roll hem as I go. With the skirts and the bodice fully attached, now all that's left is to add some gold waistband trim and some celestial bling. Okay, this one is all done. I love the way this one came out. There are a few changes I want to make immediately. I want to add, can you guys even see that? Let me lower you. I want to add more bling this way, maybe come a little further in. Although I don't know how my arm radius will affect that. Maybe just some extra gemstones or something. I love the way my organza turned out as far as like the hack of tinting the color. I don't like the way the gold turned out though. It's patchy, it's thick, it's kind of getting wet in the rain. It kind of got a little tacky, which I know I had to go ham on the gold because it took a lot to get it to take. And I think at one point I was just doing straight gold fabric paint, which I hate the texture of. So when I assembled it, all of the seams where the organza and the velvet meet, I left as just a zigzag stitch so that I can take it out and change this layer later. Otherwise, I love the fact that I gave it pockets. I love the fact that I'm comfortable. I did leave the bottom half of the arms off. While today is only 75 and rainy, the rest of the week is not projected to be, and the week of Halloween is not projected to be. Otherwise, we've been sitting at like 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. And so I left the bottom of the sleeves off. I have them assembled that if I want to wear them as like a glove, I can at a later date. Or I can attach them at a later date if I'm ever in a place where it's not Central Florida. But yeah, I had a lot of fun making this one. So thank you for hanging out with me, guys. If you are still here, I greatly appreciate you. Give me a comment down below, like, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll have some more shenanigans next time.